It started on a blistering afternoon, the kind of Texas heat that makes the air dance above the dirt. Folks in Sweetwater County thought of Miss Rosa Bennett as nothing more than an old widow with a stubborn streak, running her little ranch like time hadn't moved on. They had no idea she'd once been someone else entirely. Out beyond the mesquite trees, her granddaughter Kayla was stacking feed buckets, talking about irrigation systems and soil science college dreams in dusty boots. Rosa just smiled, steady hands and quiet eyes like she'd seen every storm the land could throw and wasn't scared of another. Then came the SUVs, three of them black as oil and moving like they owned the road. When they rolled up the driveway and threw gravel at Rosa's boots, Kayla thought it was some kind of mistake. But the men who poured out carried rifles and smirks, and the one in the white shirt, Victor Ramirez, walked like he'd been practicing intimidation his whole life. "Senora Bennett," he called, his gold teeth flashing, "you're standing on our new property." Rosa just said, calm as Sunday morning, "This is my land. You need to leave." Victor laughed, and his boys laughed with him. One of them shoved her. Another grabbed Kayla by the arm. Rosa's voice barely rose above a whisper. "Let the girl go." Victor leaned in close, his cologne sweet and heavy. "Take the generous offer, Grandma, or we burn it all." What nobody saw, what nobody even thought to look for, was Rosa's pantry door. Not the canned peaches or the mason jars lined up neat, but the false panel behind them carved with a code only her fingers remembered. While the men ransacked her house, she slipped inside like she was steadying herself. Two clicks, a soft pop, and her pass came out of the wall, a matte black sniper rifle inside a worn case. Kayla barely had time to gasp before Rosa's hands moved faster than her eyes could follow. The first shot spun a cartel man into the wall. The second drilled another in the leg. Shoulders, knees, arms, non-fatal, but permanent reminders. When sirens sounded in the distance, Victor dragged his men back to their trucks, blood on their boots, fury in his eyes. "This isn't over, old woman," he spat. Rosa stood on her porch rifle at her side, watching them disappear in a cloud of dust. That night, Sheriff Earl Dalton showed up with flashing lights and easy charm, acting concerned, but scanning every corner like he owned the place. Folks around here had learned to trust a badge, but Rosa had been in countries where uniforms meant nothing. She saw the twitch in his jaw when his deputies searched her kitchen without asking. She saw the glance he threw at Kayla's phone when the girl tried to record. And later she saw him parked out by the highway talking to a black SUV. Pastor Freeman told her what she already suspected. Dalton had been on the cartel payroll for years, pushing black farmers off their land, taking a cut on every deal. Rosa's jaw tightened. "Then they picked the wrong old lady," she said. The next days were a quiet fever. While the county thought she was mending fences, Rosa was wiring trip lines, weaving fishing line through thorn bushes, sharpening stakes. She taught Kayla how to walk without sound, how to count incoming engines by echo. "We protect what's ours," she told her granddaughter. "We don't run." On the third morning, engines growled on the horizon, two dirt bikes scouting the back acres. Rosa moved like smoke through the mesquite, climbing her old perch in the oak. One bike hit her trip wire and somersaulted into hidden stakes. The second went down on the thorned line. A third rider tried to flee. One-shot engine block cracked silence. Kayla watched from the window, mouth open, as her grandmother gathered weapons from the fallen men like it was a routine chore. But Dalton wasn't done. He came back with deputies under the cover of investigation, tearing apart what Victor hadn't already touched. Family photos smashed, heirlooms broken. Kayla dragged away from her phone. Rosa sat in her rocking chair, hands folded, eyes cold as river stones. "You touch my granddaughter," she said softly. "And badge or no badge, they'll never find all the pieces." Dalton stepped back, but his smile turned to a sneer. "You won't survive the night." When darkness fell, the barn went up first, Molotovs crashing through windows, horses screaming as fire consumed the stalls. Gunfire ripped through the house glass, exploding inward. Rosa shoved Kayla toward the kitchen. "Stay low." Then the door burst and Victor stormed in, with two gunmen, Dalton behind him like a shadow. The fight was brief and brutal. Rosa's shoulder torn by a bullet. Kayla wrenched from her arms a rifle butt to the head. Flames rising, smoke choking Victor, dragging Kayla to a waiting truck. "Come find us," he taunted. "Let's see what you're really made of." The flare hit the gasoline on the floor. The house ignited, and Rosa crawled through fire and glass to the porch just in time to see the taillights disappear. Dawn came slow. The house was Ash the barn, a black skeleton. 6 animals buried in shallow graves. Rosa dug with one good hand and a splinted wrist. Pain was an old friend. It meant she was still alive. And as she cleaned her wounds with field dressings from a hidden cache, she whispered to herself, assess, act, survive. She dug up an encrypted sat phone, called an old number from a life she'd buried. 2 hours later, a courier dropped a key. In a storage unit outside town, Rosa opened crates she never thought she'd touch again. Barrett sniper rifle, body armor, night vision goggles C4. She laid each piece out like communion black paint across her cheeks, hair tucked under a helmet. The widow of Johnson Ranch disappeared. In her place stood a ghost from the government's darkest wars. Night wrapped around the desert compound where they held Kayla. Rosa lay prone on a rocky outcrop, the world glowing green through her night vision scope. Guards smoked at the gate, sloppy and overconfident. A knife slid into one before he could finish his cigarette. A suppressed shot dropped the tower guard, scrolling on his phone. Charges planted under fuel tanks. The first explosion bloomed like a sunrise, men scattering radios crackling in panic. Rosa moved with patient precision, her M4 coughing quiet bursts. Shoulders, knees, arms non-fatal when she could, lethal when she had to. Come on, boys, she murmured. Bunch up nice and tight. Another charge detonated 2 trucks, flipping chaos perfect. Inside the main building, Carlos had Kayla in a chokehold, pistol to her temple. Show yourself, vieja, or she dies, he screamed. Sheriff Dalton stepped out of the shadows with 2 deputies, revolver raised, smug grin back on his face. Quite a resume. You've been hiding, Rosa, he said. But you're outnumbered, outgunned, and done. Rosa's voice stayed ice cold. Check the girl's phone. One deputy glanced down, eyes going wide. Boss, she's live streaming. Dalton snatched the phone, thousands watching, recording, hearing every word. His face twisted, revolver lifting. Rosa's shot was faster. 1 round clean through his forehead. Deputies dropped their weapons and ran. Carlos tightened his grip on Kayla. You can't hit me without hitting her. Rosa took a step closer. I've made harder shots. Another step. You know your mistake, Carlos, he spat. Old woman, she smiled. You forgot to check her hands. Kayla drove the small knife her grandmother had slipped her into his thigh. He howled, grip loosening. Rosa's M4 barked twice. Carlos flew backward, chest a red blossom, eyes glassy. Smoke and dust settled over the room. Kayla stumbled into Rosa's arms, sobbing. You came for me. Rosa kissed her forehead. Always will. Outside, synchronized charges erased the compound vehicles, burning fuel tanks erupting. By dawn, FBI agents were combing through evidence Rosa had left for them. Them ledgers, deeds, photos of Dalton hunting with cartel bosses. The community rolled up too, Pastor Freeman, with trucks of lumber neighbors, with food and water. Your grandmother stood up when nobody else would, one old woman told Kayla. The least we can do is help rebuild. Rosa stood on her porch arm in a sling watching them work. Kayla organized crews with a new steadiness in her voice. For the first time, Rosa let herself feel proud, not of the rifle or the kills, but of the girl she'd raised, the one who'd stepped into the fire and out again stronger. Still as hammers rang and trucks unloaded lumber. Rosa's eyes stayed on the horizon. They'd killed her animals, burned her home, tried to take her blood. They'd learned what it meant to underestimate a woman who'd spent a lifetime being underestimated. But she also knew there were always more men like Victor Ramirez, more sheriffs Dalton in every county, more people ready to take what wasn't theirs. She'd rebuilt once. She could do it again. Or she could teach the next generation to hold the line before it came to that. And that's where I'll leave it with you. This image of a grandmother in grease paint and body armor, rocking on her rebuilt porch. At sunrise, a rifle case at her feet, her granddaughter beside her. Some folks say she's a hero, others call her dangerous. Me, I think she's what happens when someone's pushed too far for too long. So what do you think? Was Rosa right to fight fire with fire? Or should she have trusted the system and waited for help that might never come? Drop your thoughts below about justice, land, and the lines you draw if someone tried to take what's yours, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next story.